How y'all doing? How's little limp gang? How y'all doing? Nothing wrong with this room. 40 push-ups and a 4-mile run wouldn't cure. Yeah. Okay, now let's cut to the chase here. I am the closing keynote speaker. In the speaking business, that means my mission is to send you out of here with your heads up and your tails high and excited about what you learned here. Tracking? Yeah, you're listening, but you're not buying yet. I got it, okay? And part of my challenge is I have to follow some of the ringing things that have gone on so far. And let's see, we've had leadership competencies and strategies for successful navigation of career paths, creating a world-class workforce, redesign and operationalize your medical staff for healthcare reform, surviving the affordable healthcare earthquake, and how to incite the changes you need in time, and finally the prescription for transformation strategies and tactics to succeed. And after all that, you got me all the way down here at the bottom. So, Dan, I'm in there for you. I'm representing you. I got to say, it's great to do these leadership things. Normally, I'm doing memorial leadership lectures, so I like doing this one a lot better. You got to work a little harder at that. I'm working up here. There's a smaller room. You got to fill it. All right. Now, leadership should be easy. It should be easy. And I could talk to you about it for a long time, or I could just show you it's easy. And all I need you to do is take whatever's in your hands out of your hands and put your feet flat on the floor now. And all I need you to do now, with nothing in your hands and staying in your seat, I need you to lift your hands over your head as high as you can. That's it. Just lift them up as high as you can. Not as high as you want to, as high as you can. If your elbows are bending, you're not trying. There you go, as high as you can. Higher. Higher. Take a deep breath. Hold it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let it out. Lift higher. Thank you. Put your hands down. That's leadership. No kidding. I'm from Huntsville. It's not rocket science. You take a bunch of people, you get them together, you give them a task, you organize them on the task, you tell them what the task requires, you tell them to execute, you monitor their performance while they're executing, and when they get to where they think they can't go any further, you give them a tactic, a technique, a procedure, a process, some tool, so they do it better than they did before. That's what it is. Not very complicated. It should also be easy, because there's plenty of information about the subject of leadership. It's not like there's a paucity of information and nobody's ever studied the subject before. Google leadership. In 0.27 seconds, I got 172 million hits. It's not like there's only one way to do it, there's only one answer, there's lots of options. And whenever you ask somebody, what should I do in a leadership situation like this, the answer always comes back, it depends. So there's plenty of options because there's plenty of information. The other reason it should be easy, is that people want it. Think about the people that work for you every day. Think about the people that get the privilege of basking in the glow of your charisma every day. Yeah, not so funny, is it? Yeah. Think about that. They don't get up in the morning, roll over, look at their significant other and go, I can't wait to go work for the idiot I work for today. They don't. No, they don't, ladies and gentlemen. They want their leaders to be the people they meet in Costco with their significant other, in Starbucks, in Walmart, someplace, and they want to say, honey, come here, I want you to meet my boss. They want to be well led. And by the way, if that's not happening to you, if you're going by in Costco, Walmart, or Starbucks someplace and you're getting the wave like, hi, and they keep going, the conversation afterwards is something like this. Oh, honey, who was that? Well, that's the boss. Not my boss. That's the boss. So it should be easy because there's plenty of information and people want to be well led. The third reason it should be easy is leaders usually want to lead well. I mean, regardless of, I'm from Alabama now, regardless of your athletic allegiance, Nick Saban and Gus Malzahn are not putting on appropriately colored jerseys, looking in the mirror in July and going, this year 2-12, yeah. So there's plenty of information about how to do it. The people that you're going to lead want to be well led. And leaders usually want to lead well. Now, the next thing is a question that requires you to answer. And the question I have is, so what gets in the way? What gets in the way? And if I'm looking at you, it doesn't mean you need to talk, but it's an indicator. What gets in the way? Priorities. Personalities. Urgency. Tell me more. Urgency. I got urgent stuff to do, and because I'm doing all this urgent stuff on everybody's to-do list, I'm not getting to the important stuff. Very profound. Personalities. The very thing that makes us who we are gets in the way. Wow. There's a message there, isn't there? The very thing that makes people unique and special and makes you able to leverage their talents and capacity gets in the way. Now let me tell you what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to cover a couple of things, and I'm going to get you out of here on time. Work for you? I'm working up here. Yeah, fake it till you feel it. You'll be all right. Yeah. I'm going to talk about what type of leader are you? I'm going to talk about what type of leader are you? I'm going to talk about in times like these. It's important to remember there have always been times like these. I'm going to talk to you about what your job isn't. What your job isn't. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 expectations your folks have of you. I'm going to open the floor up for questions and answers. You got the questions, I got the answers. We got that sorted out now? Good. And Cheryl has told me I don't get leave or get paid till I answer 4 questions. You don't either. And then I got to wrap it up with a couple of thoughts to leave you with. Fair enough? Hello? Yes. Yeah, you're going to get there, I promise. Believe me. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing. What type of leader are you? It depends. Depends on the situation, depends on my folks, depends on everything else. I think it depends on something else. And I saw this very profound statement once, said the type of leader you are can be found in how you answer a question. Are you the leader who walks into the situation and your attitude is, here I am? Or are you the leader that walks into a situation and says, there you are? What type of leader are you? Are you a here I am, it's all about me? Or are you a there you are, it's about you? And I submit how you tend to do that, and doing the wrong one at the wrong time really severely impacts your ability to lead. Are you turned on about what you're doing, or were you turned on about what they're doing? That's what makes it hard. What type of leader are you? I hear people say a lot as I go around and talk to the medical community quite a bit, and for some reason I've been getting an awful lot of presentations in the medical community. What I find is they come to me and go, you know, it's really hard now. We really got tough times like these. It's really a challenge. 1990s, I was in the Army, and we were really challenged. We had to take 18,000 soldiers from Fort Hood, Texas, and move them to the Balkans for a year. And we had people running around saying, my God, we're going to break the Army. We've got to take 18,000 soldiers, move them someplace we'd never planned to do that. It'll break the Army. 5 years later, we're moving 750,000 soldiers a year in and out of Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and Kuwait. You can't break this Army. You can bend it, but you can't break it. Not with these kids we've got. And we were wringing our hands in the 1990s saying, sir, it's going to be tough. Oh my God, these are tough times, stuff. And General Reimer looked at us and said, you know, it's important to remember in times like these, you better figure out there have always been times like these. Times that challenge us, times that stress us, times that make us reach down and go, what's going on? And you could say, well, Boles, you don't understand how difficult these times are. And I say, yeah, I think I got an idea, but let me give you an example of what the change I've seen just since I came in the Army. 1976, Iran is our #1 ally in the Persian Gulf. Think about that. #1 ally in the Persian Gulf. Gerald Ford is the president because Richard Nixon has resigned and Spiro Agnew left the vice presidency, and Richard Nixon wanted to put John Connally of Texas in as the vice president, and the Congress said, no, he's a turned, quote, Democrat who became a Republican. Nobody's voting for him. You want a Republican. The one we can all live with is Jerry Ford. So Gerald Ford becomes the vice president, and a year to 18 months later becomes the president. Jimmy Carter's elected president. On the 4th of July, I'm at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, getting ready to go up to my home in New York City for the 200th birthday of America. My platoon sergeant, a 3-time Vietnam veteran, looks at me and says, sir, you going up to New York this weekend? Yeah. How are you going to get there? I'm going to take the train. He said, you're going to wear your uniform? Yeah. Sir, I wouldn't do that. Uniforms make them nervous. Wow. How different is it now? These kids are walking through the Atlanta airport. They can't get 15 feet before people are stopping them and thanking them. But it was very different in 1970s. The Berlin Wall is up in 1976. It's been up for 15 years. Warsaw, Poland's the capital of a communist country. George Herbert Walker Bush is our envoy to China. And Jerry Brown is the governor of California. In the 1980s, the Shah's overthrown. We ally ourselves with Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war. Ronald Reagan becomes president. Captain Boles is trying to explain to his wife in Boston, Massachusetts, while I'm getting a graduate degree and she's working at Newton Wellesley Hospital, how come we should still stay in the Army, because even though we can't afford a house at 16% mortgage rates, the Army's still a pretty good deal. We're fighting in Grenada. We have a thing called Iran-Contra. George Bush gets elected president in 1998, and the Berlin Wall falls at the end of the 1980s, at the end of the decade. 1990s, we have Desert Shield, Desert Storm. The Soviet Union implodes. Think of that. 1976, and 14 years later, the Soviet Union implodes. Nobody was thinking that. In June of 1991, George Herbert Walker Bush, having finished Desert Shield, Desert Storm, enjoys a 91% approval rating. 17 months later, he loses election to a combination of Bill Clinton and Ross Perot. November 1992, we elect Bill Clinton. The 1990s, the economy booms. Booms. 1997, a guy named Nathan Myhrvold is the chief technology officer from Microsoft. Pretty big dude, yes? You think you go to a high-tech conference, a technology conference, you send somebody and they say, no, I didn't go to hear Nathan speak. You think they have a job next week? You better get in that room and pay attention, because he's the chief technology officer. I want to know what he's saying. And Nathan, in 1997, looks at the technological landscape, looks at the economy, and says, it is perfectly clear to me, Apple's already dead. Yeah. I hear that, and I always wonder, how's Nathan's iZoom working? You always wonder about that? Yeah. But he knew. He was wrong, but he knew. Finally, in 1992, there were 100 sites on the World Wide Web. A total of 100 sites on the World Wide Web. 31 December 1999, Colonel Boles is sitting in the Operations Center in Washington, D.C., watching for this thing called Y2K. What's going to happen? Remember that? Remember all the money we threw at that? Nothing happened. We were torn between, did we throw our money away, or were the technology folks right? We never knew. 9/11 happens. On 9/11, an entity with no standing army, no standing economy, and no standing government attacks the United States of America and kills 3,000 people. And my view of warfare radically changes. In Florida, 536 people decide the 2000 election. In the year 2000, a young man named Barack Obama cannot get a credential to attend the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles. We have iPhones, we have Facebook, we have PTSD, TBI, we have Wounded Warriors. In 2008, we elect Barack Obama president. And then later in 2008, we have the greatest recession since the Great Depression. Who predicted that? 2010, we leave Iraq. Now we're going back. The Tea Party stands up in response to the Affordable Care Act. Russia's in the Ukraine. We're debating this thing called climate change. And Jerry Brown's the governor of California. Well, General Boles, we appreciate that little run through history, and that was kind of cute and trite, and it was really great, and I appreciate my high school history lesson again, but what was the point of that? The point of it was to you as leaders is what your job isn't. What your job isn't. Your job is not to predict the future. And I see leaders again and again paralyzed by the fact, I'm not going to do anything because I don't know what's going to happen. Your job's not. Who could have predicted that future I just outlined? Nobody. If you'd predicted that future in 1976, you would have put us in the Army. They would have sent that guy for your analysis someplace. You can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen. Just like I didn't know what happened in the last 40 years, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 40, but it's coming. Your job, ladies and gentlemen, as leaders, is not to predict the future, but to build an organization that can handle the future when it breaks upon them. That has the resiliency and has the strength and has the belief in your leadership that they will follow you when it happens. That's what your job is. And that's what I want to talk about for the rest of this afternoon. One of the reasons I think leadership gets hard is we tend to think about leadership in terms of what works for us. This works for me. This turns me on. This motivates me. And when you're leading others, you have to reverse that equation and say, what works for? Work with me. What works for them? What turns them on? What motivates them? What works for them? And what I'd like to start with you is, I'd like to start by sharing with you the 4 expectations your folks have of you when you are in a leadership role and you are leading them. There are 4 expectations they have of you. Now, in full disclosure, I will admit I stole this. I stole it. I was born and raised in New York City, was a young man. My dad would bring me downtown, and I saw the Twin Towers go up as they were getting constructed. So on 9/11, when I was standing in my office in Rock Island, Illinois, watching them come down, it was a very different experience for me. It was visceral. And I don't know about you, but I got sick after about 2 or 3 days of watching the news. I just got sick of it. It was the same darn news any channel you turn to. There's the hole, there's the smoke, somebody's trying to tell me how I'm feeling. I know how I was feeling. So after a couple of days, I turned it off and just went to C-SPAN, because C-SPAN didn't tell me what to think or what was going on. They just broadcast and said, here it is, watch for yourself. And one night I was watching, and former President Clinton, whose wife at that time was the senator from New York, was speaking to an audience in New York. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, to address this challenge, we as a nation must support President George Bush in the 4 most critical things he has to do as a leader to get us through this. 4 things. I'm listening. Not 3 things, not 5 things, 4 things. And I wrote those 4 things down, and for the next 9 years as a general officer, in peace or war, in conflict or at home, in the training base or in the industrial base, wherever the Army took me, when I failed to do my job, when I failed to take care of my folks as a leader, it was because I didn't do these 4 things. I didn't do these 4 things. And I'd like to share those with you now. Work for you? First, the first expectation your folks have of you if you're leading them is that you will establish a structure for them to operate in. Now, when I'm talking structure, I'm not talking about the wiring diagram where the spaces and faces go. Some people got dotted lines, some people got straight lines, some people are over others. You kind of inherit that. That's not the structure I'm talking about, though you probably want to look at it. The structure I'm talking about, that their expectation is they want to know, how are you structured? How are you wired? How do you make decisions? How do you decide to decide? They want to know what's important to you. Have you ever had a patient, a client, a date, a customer? Have you ever had somebody in a relationship that you've said to yourself at some point in time, I'd be really happy to give them what they wanted if I just knew what it was? You ever had that? How many of your folks are saying that about you? How many of the folks that work for you are saying when they walk out of the room, I'd be happy to give them what he or she wanted, but I just wish I knew what it was? So how are you wired? How do you share that expectation with them about, here's what I need, here's what's important? Because we're all wired different. I had 3 bosses when I was a general officer in the Army. I had more than that, but there are 3 I'll talk about. One boss, we'd get a staff study, 300 pages, done by a contractor about some issue. He'd walk in, give it to me. I'd walk into the boss. Boss would take one look at that and say, I'm not reading that. Not me. You get somebody out there, Vinny, to read that. Give me the 1-2-page executive summary, the 5 critical PowerPoint charts I need, and that's what I want. Got it. That's how he was wired. Had another boss, happens to new bosses a lot. I bring the 300-page study in, the boss goes, ooh, give me that. I'll take it home for my weekend reading. I'll read the whole thing myself. And some of you might be old enough to remember. In the 1960s, there was a TV show, Lost in Space. Remember that? Remember the robot? What did the robot always say? Danger, Will Robinson. This is your first Danger, Will Robinson moment. If your boss ever does that and says, oh, give it to me, I want to read it, make a copy. Oh, it's funny now. It wasn't funny that Monday. He walked in and said, hey, Vinny, I left it home. What was in it? I got a meeting in 30. You'd be surprised how fast you can print 300 pages off you have to. So make a copy. But I had one boss that said, I want to read the whole thing. I had another boss who was a joy. He would say, give me the executive summary and the 5 PowerPoint charts and give me the 300-page thing. I'm going to read them both and grade your homework. When we had his farewell, I bought the beer to make sure he was leaving. Now, the point is this. I started out with how are you wired, how are you structured? Are those 3 individuals different? Are they wrong? No. But they're different. Spend your energy putting your folks in a position where they can give you what you want because they know how you're structured rather than spinning their wheels trying to figure out what you want. So how are you structured? I get new bosses especially who'll say, look, I don't know how I'm structured yet. I'm new to this. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself. And I look at them and I go, then tell them that. Go tell them. They go, what do you mean? I said, do something like this. Look, I'm new in this job, just started out, I'm getting my arms around it, I want to keep doing what we're doing. But in 6 weeks, I'd like to talk with you, I'd like to talk with you, I'd like to talk with you, you, and you. I'd like you to come in, sit down with me for an hour and a half, let's go over some things we're doing and tell me what works or doesn't work. What have I just done to those individuals I pointed to? I'm sorry, that's a question, I didn't mean to wake you. What did I just do with those individuals? And somebody just empowered them. You think they're not going to pay attention for the next 6 weeks? You think they're not engaged? By the way, let me tell you a secret when you do that. Never failed. Happens every time I've done it. They can't wait 6 weeks. They can't. They come in about the 2-week mark and go, got a minute? Something you need to know. You need to change this now. So if you don't know, just tell them, hey, I don't know what to do. Now all of a sudden you've empowered your organization and they're helping your best get better. First critical thing, first critical expectation, they want to know, how are you structured? And you have to establish that structure for them. Second critical thing they want you to do, second critical expectation they have, you're going to help them manage the critical relationships in the organization. You're going to help them manage those critical internal relationships and external relationships. Put another way, you're going to be a force for good. When you get involved in a relationship with somebody inside the organization or outside the organization, you're going to make it better. It was really brought home to me about a year ago. Got a call from a retired 4-star I used to work for. And he called me up and said, hey, Vinny, you still doing that consulting thing you do? Yes, sir. Come see me. I had 2, he had 4. I came quickly. I said, yes, sir, I got it. He says, hey, I want you to go up. There's this company I'm on the board for. It's a $10 million commercial off-the-shelf software company. We've been working with them for a while. I've been on the board for a bit, and we want you to talk to them. Do that consulting thing you do. Don't you like broad guidance, you know? So I said, well, sir, what's the problem? He said, well, they're a $10 million company. I said, what's the problem? He said, Vinny, 5 years ago, they were a $10 million company. We can't figure out why they're not a $100 million company. And then I had my second Danger Will Robinson moment. I found out CEO of the company was the founder, was an engineer, and of the 100 people in the company, 65 of them were engineers. Now, I don't hate engineers, and I live in Huntsville where a pocket protector is considered high fashion. Don't laugh unless you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. But it is. And I start walking in and I start getting a lot of, you don't understand. You don't understand. So finally I sat down with the CEO after about 2 days of I don't understand and said, what's the problem? You're making this commercial off-the-shelf software, you're trying to sell it to the government, what's the problem? He looks at me and says, the government's stupid. Oh, heard that before in your business? I said, really? Well, how do you propose to get this word across to the government? He said, well, I go to forums like this and associations, and a couple of years ago, I got to be a keynote speaker, and I got to get up and tell the government how stupid they were. I said, well, how'd that go? He says, well, not too well. I said, so what'd you do then? He said, well, then I hired a lobbyist. And the lobbyist got me to Congress so I could meet with senators and congressmen and get in line and tell them how stupid the government was. Well, let me tell you what happens when he does that. You're at the Pentagon, and at 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, your phone rings, and the staffer from Senator fill-in-the-blanks office calls and says, the senator wants to see you and wants you to come over here and tell us why the government's so stupid. Oh, those are joyful calls. You just love them. So all of a sudden, you know, this guy's not doing so hot managing relationships. And it really hit me when I sat down and started talking to his sales force. And I remember this one lady I talked to, she was bereft. I said, what's wrong? And I still see her lip trembling. She said, we got great products. If I can just get my foot in the door, I can sell them. But every flippin' time I go to see a client in the government, they come to the door, look at me and go, oh, you work for the boss who says we're stupid. Come on in. She said, I can't get over that. I said, well, how's the rest of Salesforce, dealing with this? She said, is this off the record? Sure. She said, we're looking for other jobs. Now, how well was that leader helping them manage the relationship? Not well. Your folks expect you to manage those critical relationships. And you got to watch them because they change a lot. Somebody who's critical to you now may not have been so critical a year to 18 months ago. So you got to watch them and you got to make sure they're changing. And what you need to do is do the following homework assignment. Take a sheet of paper and write down the words internal and external across the top, and write down the top critical internal and external relationships you need to manage effectively for things to go well. Who's the person in HR you got to have a good relationship with? Who's the person in finance you need to have a good relationship with? Who's the person in the organization who's known as Dr. No? Remember those? The one person, if you want to know why it's too difficult, too tough, somebody else should be doing it, it wasn't their fault, you know who to go talk to. And identify those relationships internally and externally, and then grade them. And I have a simple grading system. A plus sign means the relationship's going where? Yeah, you can figure this out. I have faith in you, I really do. A minus sign means what? The one you really need to worry about is a question mark. It's a critical relationship, and I'm not sure how it's going. Because I used to work with Jeannie over there, but Jeannie left 18 months ago, and John's come and taken Jeannie's place, and I haven't spent any time engaging John. I better go do that. And then pull your calendar out, and pull out your BlackBerry, iPad, iPhone, Abacus, whatever you use to track your time. And I guarantee the next thing. Wherever you have a minus sign or you have a question mark, you have not had a positive engagement with that individual in the last 6 months. You haven't. Now, you're going to give me a lot of reasons for it. They're difficult. They're a pain. They're a challenge to work with. I don't like them. You're going to have a dozen reasons. And I'm going to tell you, your folks' expectation is it's a critical relationship. They need you to get over it and help them manage it. And it's hard to do, and it rolls off my tongue and sounds easy when I talk fast. But you have to help manage those critical relationships, because if you're not managing those critical relationships, you're putting another burden on your folks instead of helping them. So establish structure, manage critical relationships. Third critical thing you have to do, the third critical expectation they need you to meet, is they need you to balance risk. And balancing risk means identifying and mitigating risk. It does not mean risk avoidance. We are in a risky time in our country. I mean, you read the papers, I read the papers. We are not in a risk avoidance world. If you want to avoid risk, this is not the business to be in. This is not the time to be alive. Risk is all around us. The true job of leaders is to identify, balance, and mitigate risk. And the way you do that, your third Danger Will Robinson moment, is you have to go to the critical intersecting points in your organization. See, have you heard the term stovepipes in organizations? Yes? Here's what I found over time doing this, both in the military world and corporate world. Within the stovepipes, stuff usually operates pretty well. The folks in HR know their systems, know their structures, know what they're doing. The folks in resource management know their systems, know what they're doing. The folks in marketing, folks in treatment, they all know what they're doing. The problem is when they've got to intersect and talk to each other. You ever seen a relay race in track in the Olympics? Yes? Where do you win or lose the race? In the handoff lane. Normally you don't lose it, Normally, they don't lose it out on the track. Normally, somebody's flopping around, dropping a baton someplace, or doesn't do the handoff efficiently, and that's where you win or lose it. It's the same thing in your organization. If you want to know where things are going to go wrong, where things have the potential to go wrong, where the risks are going to occur, it's going to be at the critical intersecting points in your organization, where things get handed off. And that's a real critical thing. So establish structure, manage relationships, balance risk. Now, one of the key things you have to do in order to balance risk effectively is I'm going to ask you to change the way you end your meetings. Most meetings, boss comes in, boss sits down, we go around the conference table, the video conference, whatever it is, meeting goes on, boss says, okay, everybody's got it. Boss says, are there any? And the answer is always, and you would hurt them if they had a question. If they had a question, you'd look over and go, I got to get out of here. Send them an email. I got something I got to do. So what I want is, are there any questions to be the next to last question you ask? Because I want the last question to be asked is this. Okay, to prove this hasn't been rehearsed. So Steve, what do you need to do between now and the next meeting? Lori, what do you have to do between now and the next meeting? Farrell, what do you have to do between now and the next meeting? Matt, what do you have to do between now and the next meeting? Kathy, what do you have to do between now and the next meeting? Now, the first time you do that, what is the reaction around the table going to be? Uh-oh. Could you go over that again one more time? He's never done this before. What's wrong? And you're going to get a little apprehensive, and you're going to talk yourself out of doing it because you're going to want to pull back and say they were uncomfortable. What I want to tell you to do is hang in there. It takes 3 weeks. It takes 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, here's what starts happening. Kathy goes over to Steve and goes, you know he's going to ask. Now, here's what I think I got to do. What do you got to do? Where we got to crosstalk? And then they start saying, Steve says, I got A, B, and C. And Kathy goes, whoa, I thought I had C. And the meeting stops going from an event they all want to get the heck out of to a coordination mechanism where they can identify risk, balance risk, and mitigate risk, and make things get better in the organization. And I've had people come up to me and say to me, you know, we tried that, we thought it was a joke, and we're still doing it 18 months later. Because asking that one question is, what do you got to do? What do you got to do? What do you got to do? Sometimes you're going to get back, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, let me go over it again. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. That's better than the alternative, which is they all go outside in the hallway, look at each other and say, I hope somebody's going to do something about that. The fourth critical expectation they want you to make, and after I finish this one, we're going to open the floor to questions. The fourth expectation that's very critical is they expect you as a leader, they have an expectation that you will make decisions. Wow. Hey, Cheryl, you're all over it. You brought a retired 2-star general to Atlanta all the way from Huntsville, Alabama to tell us leaders make decisions. Woo-wee. I'll bet he got an A in his leadership exam. Leaders make decisions. Boy, General Boles, you're a smart one. Everybody knows that. And I thought so too. Until July 1993, when I had that dramatically revealed to me in another way. I had attained my life's dream in the United States Army. I had made Lieutenant Colonel and was selected to command the 701st Maine Support Battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas. I don't know what that means. I'll explain it quickly. 18,000 soldiers on Fort Riley, Kansas. If they ate it, drank it, fueled it, fixed it, ordered something for it, needed medical attention for it, needed it transported somewhere, one of my 900 soldiers touched it. Got it? Thought I died and gone to heaven. Greatest job I had, before or since, greatest job I had in the Army. And I got that job, and I'd been in the job about 4 or 5 weeks, and I'm a walk-around kind of leader. And I was walking around and went down to one of my main places, about 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers, big fence around it, vehicles on the outside, operations offices and shops on the inside. And there was a little guard shack by the front. And I walked in the guard shack, and there was this young private first class, been in the Army about 18 months. And I just need a training aid here. Ma'am, what's your last name? Yes. Gottney. I never find Smith. I never do. No. So I run into Private First Class Gottney. And I'm looking at Gottney and say, Gottney, what do you do here? You ever been around somebody in your organization? Doesn't matter where they're at. If they're on the loading dock, if they're mopping the floor, if they're in the C-suite. But you ever met somebody that they've got it? They own it. You know, you give it to them, they got it. They'll take care of it. Gottney was one of those kids. I said, Gottney, what do you do here? He said, sir, I'm the gate guard. I got two responsibilities. Normally, I'm a generator mechanic. Today, I'm the gate guard. It's my duty today. I got two things I have to do. The vehicles that come up to the gate, I got to make sure what they need is what we have here. Because while that was a pretty big operation I had a fuel farm somewhere else, an ammunition plant somewhere else, and some other places they could go. Didn't want them driving around if they weren't supposed to be there. So Gottney's first job was to figure out, did we have it, direct them to where to go and do that. Pretty important job. Second job, Gottney said, is, sir, I checked the vehicle, what's on the vehicle, against the manifest for the vehicle. I said, what does that mean? Sir, if they came in to get 2 radios, 2 tires, and 2 weapons, I make sure they don't leave with 102 tires, 102 weapons, and 102 radios. Pretty important job. So I watch him do this for about 3 minutes, and one thing is readily clear. This kid needs my help like a hole in the head. I don't know what's going on with the other 900 folks, but Gottney is owning his piece of the organization, and the right things are happening. So I leave. I walk away from Gottney. I walk about 100 yards down to my operations shop. Operations shop is where all the requirements for support come in, and my folks in the operations shop figure out who's going to do it. I need an ambulance at a range in 2 weeks. Foxtrot Company, ambulance platoon, 2 ambulances. Got it. 1 for a backup. I got a firing range with M1 tanks in 3 months. Delta Company, they need to have a bore scope, pullover gauge, calibration team there. Get it. You sort of got the idea? And sometimes it's like any operation shop. Sometimes they get a call in January, we need you in March. Sometimes they get a call in Monday, you know, where were you last Friday? I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the business. So I walk in, and what's it like in your place when the boss walks in the front door? What's it like? Get off your Facebook page. Quit Twittering. Stop looking at the score of the Georgia Tech game. I mean, it is. I knew that. Brand new boss, I walk in, everybody stops what they're doing, everybody starts jumping around, no work gets done. I knew that. So I came in the back door. I came in the back door of the operation shop. It's about 1/4 the size of this place we're in now. And I come in the back door, and I'm standing there, and I'm just watching it. Got about 12 folks working there, and I'm watching for about 90 seconds. And it's just happening. No fuss, no muss, no hand-wringing. People got their sleeves rolled up, just getting after it. And I'd been an operations officer, so I had an idea what I was looking at, and I was just going. It would sort of be like, I imagine you can walk in an emergency room and with your professional judgment kind of quickly figure out, are they on it or off it? Yes? That's what I was saying. I walked in the operation shop and I said, these folks are on it. They got it. Yes, I own this. This is great. And I'm watching it all go on. You ever had bosses who had pet peeves? Little weird things they did? They weren't illegal, unethical, immoral, unsafe, or fattening, but they were kind of weird. I had a boss once, green 3x5 cards and blue flare markers. That was his thing. And you know, if he didn't have them, you better have them, because that's just kind of the way it was. So we just got into that, said, okay, we'll do that. Well, I had pet peeves. And one of my pet peeves, if the phone rings more than 3 times. That gets to me. And it was a couple of reasons for it. When I would be deployed, if I was calling back to my headquarters and the phone rang more than 3 times, it was still ringing, I wondered, headquarters get taken out? Power down? Headquarters get moved? If I can't get through and I run the place, what's happening to somebody who needs support from my organization? So if the phone rang more than 3 times, I got a little antsy. It's kind of fun now. I have a home office, and it's just me in the office. I'm a one-man band, and the phone starts ringing, and I hear my wife go, I'm not getting that. So she like cuts it to the quick, so I'm running down the hall a lot. But, you know, I got the idea that I'm standing there. So I'm in the operations shop watching this churn go on, really proud of it, and I'm standing by this table, and it's 1993, pre-voicemail in the Department of Defense. Phone starts ringing. There is nobody available to answer this phone. I watch once, twice. I'm a helping kind of guy. 701st Maine Support Battalion, this is the Support Operations Section. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Boles. Can I help you? Oh God, oh, nervous. Young kid probably wanted Corporal Jones, Sergeant Smith. They got Colonel Boles on the phone, for God's sakes. Hey man, I know I'm the last person you wanted to talk to. I'm just going by picking up the phone. Tell me what you need, I'll hook you right up with the section you need. Oh, nervous. Why? I talked to him afterwards. Why he didn't slam the phone down and run away, I have no idea. I think he was just paralyzed. So I'll try one more time. Look, man, I'm the last guy you wanted to talk to. I got it. I want to talk to you about as much as you want to talk to me. Just tell me what you need, and I can hook you up with the right person who can help you. Because I'm kind of new here, and I sure can't. Sir, I'm Private First Class Gotney, and I'm supposed to call the operations shop whenever Colonel Boles shows up? Really? Stand by. About 30 seconds later, our sergeants have this spidey sense, and Master Sergeant Cheney starts looking around like this. All of a sudden, he spins all the way around, and he goes, "Ooh, sir, I didn't know you were here. Hey, Cheney, PFC Gotney wants you to know Colonel Boles is here." Click. It's pretty funny, huh? Yeah, till I thought about it. And then it wasn't so funny. How dare they? How dare they? The United States government had determined I was fully qualified to train, deploy, take care of those soldiers and families, and bring them home if I had to. And somebody in my organization had made the decision, I hadn't, that the organization had to be protected from me whenever I went around. And I hadn't been there long enough for them to get to know me yet. And I started digging into it, what happened, and they all started moonwalking like Michael Jackson, like, "Oh, it wasn't you, sir, the guy before you, you know." So, yeah, okay, fine. But what was interesting was that some of you are sitting there now going, "He needs to lighten up. That's no big deal. That happens all the time. I know I'm the CEO when I'm walking around the hospital. People are calling around saying, 'He's coming, she's coming. Get ready.' That's just the way it is, General. You just got to understand that." And I'll let you say that if you can answer one question for me that nobody in 14 years has been able to answer. If you can answer this one question for me. You ready? Yeah. How many trucks did Gotney miss in the 2 minutes he was on the phone with me? How many trucks did he miss? How many times did we stop him from doing his real job that he was good at and he knew how to do this sub-optimizing thing in the organization, which was protect the organization from the new boss? How many sub-optimized decisions are going on like that in your organization that if you knew about them, you'd be going, "We're doing what? Who said to do that?" I know you all have staff meetings. Might want to ask yourself at the next staff meeting, go around the table and say, "Tell me about the decisions you made this week. Tell me about a hard decision you're wrestling with." Now, this is your next Danger Will Robinson moment. The first time you do that, you're going to want to bite down on the inside of your jaw so hard you're going to think you need a blood transfusion. Because you're going to hear some things that may make you want to go, "What?" But if you take that reaction, it's not coming back at you anymore. So you got to lighten up and you got to say, "Just tell me about the decisions you made." Because not only is there an expectation in organizations that you as a leader will make decisions, there is an understanding in your organizations that you are responsible for every decision that gets made. Gotney thought that decision was okay with me. He thought that was okay. I asked him later, "So why'd you..." "Sir, you're the battalion commander, and I figured if that's something you wanted, you were sitting there waiting for me to call and tell him that you were there." I thought if I did... Can you imagine what it was like when he came to work that morning? "Okay, Gotney, you're the gate guard. Now you got to do this, you got to do this, and by God, if the battalion commander shows up, that phone better be ringing, kid." How many trucks did he miss? How many times do we stop people from doing their real job by a sub-optimized decision that we think we're doing for all the right reasons, but it gets in their way of doing the right things? I go often get asked, what's the most critical thing a leader can do? I think, ladies and gentlemen, after making the assumption you're a values-based, standards-driven leader, I find the most critical thing leaders can do on a day-to-day basis is take excuses away. Take excuses away. Just go up to your folks and say, "Hey, you're trying to get that done? Yeah, it seems a little hard. What's getting in your way?" Now, the first couple of times you ask, what are they going to say? "Oh, nothing. I'm fine. I just need to work a little harder." Like we say in the Army, "Just need to work a little harder, sir. I got it." So the first couple of times you ask them, they're going to blow you off. Stay after it. About third or fourth time, they're going to look at you and go, "Well, since you asked." And they'll tell you about a policy, a bureaucrat, a problem that they've been banging their heads against the wall, and if you go ahead and engage it and take it out, you have just risen yourself in their eyes and made their job easier. So they expect you to establish structure. We're going to ask questions after this. Establish structure, manage relationships, balance risk, make decisions. And one of the most critical things you do on a day-to-day basis is take excuses away. What I'd like to do now is open up the floor to questions, please, about this presentation. Anything else you want to talk about that's going on in the world, the Army, or any place else that you're spending your tax dollars? Questions, please. Ma'am. Above or below you? Lateral. Okay, the question was, I'm paraphrasing here, Georgia, so stop me. I'm trying to get my job done, but I got somebody else ain't helping.
And you need this.
And I need their help, okay? What I have found I've had to do in those situations, and I get asked this a lot, what you got to do is you got to, first off, what I don't want you to do. What I don't want you to do is do what most people do, which is the path of least resistance, which is avoidance. Because I had a situation like that once. Tore me up for a year. Finally, what you have to do is pick up the phone, call the person, and say, I need to come see you. I'm trying to get this done, and you're not getting it done. It's getting in my way. When I did that, it was a road to Damascus moment. The guy looked at me and said, oh. Now, if that person's doing it consciously, critically, and determined to stop you, then you got to determine how much pain you want to take on. You got to determine how much pain you want. And then you got to determine when do you want to elevate to the boss. Hey, you want me to work with that person to get it done? I've been trying. Here's what I've been trying to do. It's not happening. Tell me what you do, boss. Not, it's your fault you're not fixing it. I'm out of bullets, boss. Like I used to say in the Army sometimes, hey, I'm out of bullets. I need some of yours. Boss, I'm out of bullets. I need some of yours. But what you first have to do is engage that individual and make sure they know and make them aware of it in a dispassionate way. Easy to say, rolls off my tongue, sounds good when I talk fast, hard to do on a day-to-day basis, but that's the first step that I find you have to take. And I'd love to know how it works out. I really would.
Can you tell us about the book you wrote that's in executive printing?
Can I tell you about the book I wrote? Hardest thing I ever did? The question was, can I tell you about the book I wrote? I'd be happy to. No. Hardest thing I ever did, if you go on vinnyboles.com and click on the icon there and click on the icon that sends me an email, because I always do this for groups I speak to, just send me an email with your address and everything else and we'll get the book to you and don't worry about that. But the hardest thing I ever did, I spoke for about 2 years and people kept coming up to me after the presentations going, where's your book? There's no book in the back of the room, there's no book. Where's your book? Well, I don't have one. So I finally went and said, well, people kept beating me up. You got to write a book, got to write a book, got to write a book. So I wrote this book, Leadership A to Z. 3 stories with the letter A, 3 stories with the letter B. Add it, don't mistake activity for achievement. Behavior is believable. Don't mistake competence for confidence. You got the drill? And Z was kind of fun, but I got through that, And I had it all done, and I sent it down. A publisher ran into me, and we'd met at a conference, said, hey, I'd really like to see that book. And I said, great. Sent it down to him. He said, come visit. So I went down to Austin, Texas, talked to him. The senior editor sat down with me, and she said, she had the book in front of her, manuscript in front of her, and she went, I've been looking on your website, and I've been looking on your Speakers Bureau's websites, and there's a presentation you do called 4321 Leadership. You got the 4 today. 4321 Leadership. Where's that book? I said, well, I didn't think there was enough there. She says, that's the book you have to write. She slid the manuscript across at me and said, the guy who mows your lawn could write this A to Z book. Only you can write the 4321 book. So there went 18 months of my life, boom, back, started over again, and the rest was history and went from there. But I've had some great help, and I met some great people and things. It was the hardest thing I ever did. And people say, well, how come it was so hard? Remember, I was in the Army for 33 years. I got judged by what I got other people to do. Now, all of a sudden, if I don't like the way the book's going, my wife would look at me and say, well, go look in the mirror and yell at the guy who's getting in your way. Because I was the only guy who could write it. And I wrote it myself, and it took about 18 months, but it was a heck of a hayride, and we're in the second printing, and be nice to people you meet. I found it's a muscle that if you keep using, now I've had another publishing house call and say, we want to talk about book 2. And I'm saying, oh, good, now I have to figure out what goes in it, so I'm going to sort that out. But thank you very much for asking. Other questions, please. If I'm coming to this side of the room, it's an indicator. Good. Sir. Well, no, I'm looking at you. Come on, help me here. I'm struggling. I'm dying. Man, I'm 2 down, 2 to go. Come on. Questions, please.
Throughout this whole thing, we've heard about all these different leadership styles. We've heard about all these different leadership
leadership styles, and almost all the speakers have also said it depends. So would you say a good leader is the one that knows which leadership style to use depending on the circumstances? Because I could see a lot of people using the wrong style at the wrong time.
My advice on leadership styles is this. When you have people doing it for the first time, whatever it is, overlead. First time they're doing, like, hey, let's get, Affordable Care Act's kind of keeping you up at night, isn't it? First time it's going on, a lot of things going on. You got a whole bunch of people going, okay, we'll do it. You got another bunch of people going, I'm not doing it. Then you got a whole other bunch of people around the conference table who are smiling under the table going, I'm waiting to see what happens. And you're trying to figure out how to lead. The first time your folks are doing something, you have to overlead. Over-insert yourself, over-check intersecting points, overwatch things. If they're really experienced and have done it a couple of times before and are used to doing it and have demonstrated proficiency, you can back up. You can pulse check in and pulse check out. I'm finding that has been the most critical factor in determining my leadership style is their ability, their confidence, their familiarity with the task at hand. Put another way, I have a sergeant first class in the United States Army, and he's at basic training, and a bus comes up with 45 civilian kids. We ain't going to be building a lot of consensus. We're just not. They don't want it. They wouldn't know what it looked like if it hit them. So we're going to deal with a different leadership style. It's get them out of the bus, get them lined up, and if you want to see one of the more significant emotional events, go to a basic training reception station and watch the look on the trainees' faces when the drill sergeant goes, give me your cell phone. Kid goes, what do I get to pack? About 6 weeks, maybe. Oh my God, talk about a religious event. It's amazing. But I mean, that happens. Now, take that same sergeant first class. Put him on a Special Forces A team with people that have been doing the jobs they're doing for 18 to 24 months. All have got anywhere between 12 to 15 years of service. And that person's leadership style is going to be very different. So what it depends on is the proficiency of the individuals, the familiarity with the individuals doing the task they're doing. That's what I found has been the most critical factor. I treat a new lieutenant colonel the first couple of weeks in the Pentagon very differently than a colonel who's been in the Pentagon about 2 years. Very different style. How do you bring new people on? How many of you have had a brand new orientation where it's kind of gone like this? Hey, welcome, glad you're here. Call me if you got any questions. Like you know what the questions are. You're trying to figure out what you don't know. But I love those. Just call me if you got any questions. I don't know if I got any questions. Versus the person who says, here's what the first couple of days look like, and on day 4, I want you to come sit down and talk to me for about an hour, and how'd it go? And people will say, well, I don't have time to do that. No, but you got time to do it over again. So it comes back to what somebody said before, what's important, what's urgent. So that's a long answer to a short question, sir, but is that helpful? Okay. Other questions, please. Sir, please.
One of the risks that many leaders face is this notion of burnout because they pour themselves so into work. One of the mitigating strategies I think is important is balancing personal life and work life. Do you want to share your personal views on that?
So you want me to talk about work-life balance?
Please.
Okay, I'm going to bring Mrs. Boles into this, just so you know. First off, let's get the deception out of the way. The world has changed. Reality has changed. Got a very dear friend, a former Army battle buddy who's with me in Huntsville. He's the superintendent of schools. Dear friend, we served together a lot. He and I were talking one night. He said, man, I was thinking the other night about what it's like between when I come home from work and I remember my dad coming home from work. My dad came home from work about 6 o'clock, took his coat off, sat down, made himself a cocktail. Mom had dinner going. He watched Walter Cronkite, pulled out the newspaper. Got up, went in, said, what's for dinner? Had dinner, went up, sat down, asked how the kids were doing, sat down, watched TV, and that was it. He said, I come home now at like 6:30. I put my 2 cell phones down, check the Facebook and Twitter feeds for the school and what's going on, get voicemails and phone calls and everything else I'm doing. I'd give anything to be back in my dad's day. Any of you that think that work-life balance means this are wrongly mistaken. It doesn't. It's never going to be 50-50. 50% work, 50% home. Not going to happen. The dynamics of today don't make that happen. Well, that's really helpful, Boles. Thanks a lot. Let me tell you what is helpful. And it hit me right in the face in 2006. I was just up the road here in Knoxville, Tennessee, at a small college called Carson Newman. Some of you may know it, great nursing program. You may have nurses from Carson Newman there. And as I was asked to go up and speak there, I spoke to an audience of about 300 young people. My wife had come with me because the person who had invited me is an old friend. My wife came to spend time with her wife. My wife, you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs Temperament Indicator, yes? ENTJ. Extrovert, intuitive, thinking, judger. Married an ISFP. We're like this. And my 5'2" ISFP, little gal, petite gal, walks in the back of the room, doesn't notice that I noticed she walked in. And she walked in, sat down. Young man asked me a question, said, "Sir, I'm kind of sweet on this girl. I'm getting ready to graduate, getting ready to get commissioned in the Army, and she's pushing me off." She says, "Hey, you know, war's going on. Go get this Army thing out of your system, and then, you know, come see me later." He said, "And I'm worried that when I go back, I'm not going to be able to have balance, so what works? How have you kept balance?" And I punted. I said, "Well, let me ask the Boles referee, the balance referee in the Boles household, how to answer that." And my 5'2" ISFP stood up, looked at me with a look that said, "You'll pay for this." And then she said the following words that riveted me. And I've always kept them in my headspace about work-life balance. She said, "My life got easier about work-life balance when I understood it wasn't going to be 50-50. There are times he's getting ready to deploy, a big thing's coming on, the Affordable Care Act's just come out, it's rolling out, there's things going on, there's timed events happening, that I know about 5% is all I'm getting, because that's all he's got to give. And there's other times he comes back from a deployment, and he's back with me, and I've got him for 30 flipping days without any interference, and I'm going, please, God, take him back. Please." She said, "So sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 100%, and sometimes it's somewhere on that continuum." And she said, "What really bothered me was, if I'm only going to get 5%, give me my 5%. If you say, 'Honey, I'll pick up the kids and I'll take them to the soccer game,' put your flippin' BlackBerry down while the game's going on. If you're going to come home and have dinner with me before you go back to work tonight, don't get interrupted with 27 phone calls, and don't bring in 2 pieces of paperwork to try to do while you're trying to talk to me over dinner, and we're deceiving ourselves with we're helping ourselves. So give me the time you're going to give me. And if you do that, balance is okay. I'm okay with that." Whoa. How many of you at work, I'll say that nobody puts their hands up. I've been watching you for a day now. Many of you at work, I assume, do calendar scrubs, yes? You sit down with your executive assistant, maybe your top team. What are you doing this week? Here's what I'm doing this week. Who's got this meeting? Tracking? Yeah. Let me tell you a way to get work-life balance. Do your family calendar scrub before you do the calendar scrub at work. We normally do it the other way around. We normally do the work scrub, then we come home, Mary says, your wife says, "Mary's got a recital next Friday." "Oh, got something, can't get out. Sorry." Here's what happens if you do the family scrub first. You sit around the table and they go, "You got to do this thing next Friday," and you go, "Oh, got a recital. Kathy, could you take that for me?" And what's Kathy's response going to be? "I got it." Now, who have I just empowered in the organization? And how have I also given a message to the organization that I think work-life balance is kind of important? It's very interesting. I also work with financial services groups a lot. And this is a big struggle for them because they say, "We don't worry about work-life balance. What we do is we cross our fingers and once a year throw insane amounts of money at people as bonuses and hope it works out for the way we've treated them through the whole year." And that's what we do. So work-life balance is, first off, it's kind of, deciding on your calendar what to do. But here's the other more critical thing about work-life balance. You got me going now. What is it? What is it? Sit down and ask yourself this. When you're driving home, ask yourself this question. If I had this thing called balance in my work and my life, what would it look like? Most of you don't know. It's that one thing you're yelling at. Like people yell at, corporate headquarters, those guys up there are doing this. It's the same thing. I'll never get work-life balance. So do you know what it is? Well, no, but by God, I'm unhappy because I don't have it, but I don't know what it is. Don't blame me. Because if you don't know what it is, you're never going to catch it. Very interesting what work-life balance was in the Boles house, I found out. Wife's 5'2" on a good day. I'm 5'9". Government quarters, the cabinets are real high. I found out work-life balance in the Boles home consisted of three things. First, whenever I came home, would I empty the dishwasher? Because if I emptied the dishwasher, she didn't have to get on a stepladder and do it. So I got in the habit of emptying the dishwasher. I could still see it this day. I'd come in, the light was on, know what I'm doing. Second thing, she likes hot chocolate. Every night I'm home, I bring her a hot chocolate, whatever time it is. That's it. Third thing, I kiss her before I leave every day. Had a bad day, Fort Riley. Bad day. Wasn't going well. Called her before I got home, said, honey, I'll be good at the dishwasher, but I ain't going to be good for much else tonight. It's one of those things just grinding away at me. I'm trying to figure it out. She said, I got it. I'll make you dinner, put it in a glass of wine down in your study. Just go stay down there, don't worry about it. Stayed there at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Still couldn't solve this problem. Went back, rolled into bed, went to bed. Got up, went to physical training that morning, 6 o'clock, drove away. Got to my headquarters about 20 minutes away. Duty officer is standing there in the headquarters waiting for me. Not a good sign. When you walk in the front door and they're waiting to see you, not a good sign. I said, Sarge, what is this? He said, sir, your wife's on the phone. She wants you to call her when you get in. Sure, what's wrong? She goes, that's really bothering you, isn't it? She said, I don't know what it is, but it's really tearing you up. How'd you know? We didn't talk about it. That's the first time in 17 years you left me and didn't kiss me before you went in the morning. Sarge, have somebody else take PT. I'll be right back. Boom, out of here. It doesn't take much. Those three things, and give her the 5% and do the calendar scrubs beforehand, seems to make more of a difference. But we reverse the process. We do the work scrub, go home and tell our family, you get the scraps. And they sit there and go, I guess that's the way it is. How many of you lie to your spouses? Because you do. One of the last things your spouses say to you every day before you leave is, when are you coming? And how many of you lie? How many of you lie? My wife looked at me and said, do you know the first couple of years you were married, how many times I made dinner and had it waiting for you and I couldn't wait to have dinner with you when you got home? And you never called. Boy, I call all the time now. Texting's a whole new cool thing. I can do that now. Okay? So, good. Other questions? I got time for one more. Or we can sing 3 verses of the Army song, which is fine with me. So. Ma'am? Questions? Okay. Well, let's wrap this up. I got 2 thoughts to leave you with from 2 leadership individuals you would not normally think will give you a leadership lesson. The first person is Stevie Wonder. Come on, work with me here, come on. Stevie Wonder wrote a song called Superstition. There is a line in that song that every leader should take to heed. When you believe in things you don't understand, then you suffer. When you believe in things you don't understand, then you suffer. You're pretty senior leaders. I know one of the things you figured out is the easy ones got taken. If it was easy, somebody below you did it, took credit for it, and put it on their support form, and are probably trying to get a bonus for it. The hard ones come to you. And the hardest thing for you to do is to roll up your sleeves and say, I got to understand this before we move out. Your folks need you to do that, because if you launch them off on things that you don't understand, they are going to suffer. They're going to exert effort and everything else. So anytime you're in a room and you're saying, I'm not getting this, put your hand up. 2 things are going to happen. You're going to learn something, and after the meeting's over, 2 other people are going to come up and go, thank you, I didn't know either. So when you believe in things you don't understand, you suffer. The second person I'm going to talk to you about who gave me a leadership lesson was Andy Samberg, who used to be on Saturday Night Live. Don't look at me that way. Now, when you think about it, Saturday Night Live is a pretty daunting experience. It's a show on 90 minutes live 18 times a year. Show starts at 11:30 on Saturday night, ends at 1 o'clock on Sunday morning. They have a cast party. Everybody comes to sometime Monday morning. They roll in and say, okay, what are we doing this week? Who's the guest host? Who's the musical talent? What's going on in the world? Let's put a show together. And they start building scripts and skits. They estimate to put the 8 skits on, they have to do about 65 drafts to do that. And they put it all together. They're doing blocking. Saturday morning, they're going around with cue cards. People are getting set up. You're trying to figure out, can the talent do this? Can they not do this? What goes on? And you do all that, and the show goes on. Somebody asked Andy Samberg once, how do you get ready to go on Saturday Night Live? How do you get ready to do this? And he said, and I quote, "We don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30. We don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30. In the day and a half you have been here and gone through all these forums, you have been sitting down with your notebooks and you've been writing notes down, and even while I've been talking, you've been writing down saying, there's something I need to work on, there's something I need to fix. There's a structure I need to put in place, there's a relationship I need to manage, there's a risk I need to address, there's a decision I need to make, or something on one of those presentations. And between now and your ride home and coming back to work Monday morning, you're going to talk yourself out of it. You're going to talk yourself out of it. And I'm going to tell you why. You're going to talk yourself out of it because you're going to wait for the perfect time. I'll wait for next quarter. I'll wait for after the holidays. I'll wait till that person leaves and the new person comes in. And the reality about perfection is what? It never what? It never comes. But we talk ourselves out of doing what we think we need to do because we're waiting for the perfect time. My guidance to you is don't wait for the perfect time. Tell yourself, shut up, it's 11:30, I'm going to do something, and go out and do it. It won't be perfect, but the organization will see you care and see you're trying to make a difference, and you will make a great difference. I want to thank you so very much for what you're doing and what you're going to do in the future. I am very indebted to the medical profession. I was in great shape in the Army, and I retired in October 2009. From June 2010 to December 2013, I've had 5 surgeries. Yeah, that was my reaction. Whoa. So I've learned more about the medical profession than I intended to. But they've taken very good care of me, and I married a medical professional. And so I'm just in great indebtedness to what you do. Thank you all so very much. May God bless us all and safe home.